And I remember whenever
Yeah.
we did that talk show, and you were talking about how you could potentially have a job as a camera person at a local news station, which, funnily enough, that did actually happen.
Yeah.
But,
It
well,
happened.
let's just say that that news station was the exact same one.
Regrets.
Yeah, regrets. I mean, if we could
Regrets.
now, let me backtrack. If we could still be doing that with no problems whatsoever, I would be content and happy. It's just that the management there is the reason why things went terribly, because they let their talent
Yeah.
run amok and and encourage their worst instincts. Because at one point things were cool.
It
We were
became a
all cool
very
with each other.
toxic environment where they started like surveying us on their phones when we weren't looking,
Oh yeah,
just so
that's
that they could catch
right.
us doing literally anything
They
that
were
they could take out of context.
they were taking pictures of us in the back in the hallway, recording us. And I remember looking at one of the anchor's phones when he was showing me pictures, and I saw like photos of us where we were on our phones during a break, mind you. So it's okay for the talent to be
Yeah,
on their phones during a break, but it's not okay for the production crew to be on their phones during a break.
right. So we just have to sit there in the dark and do nothing.
Yeah. Cross dimensional interactions. Be careful what you wish for. People don't quit a bad job, they quit bad management. Precisely. And that's the thing, is that
Yes.
I am currently working at the competitor station for that place, and all of the issues that I had with that news station have been resolved at the new one that I'm working at years ago. They have an anti-harassment policy. They have a policy of uh, in my email today, I just saw something that said we have a manager evaluation. So, like, if your supervisor is not treating you properly, you can evaluate them and they'll be treated accordingly. And then, whenever you go into the break room, on the fridge it says television family, please throw out rotten food. They actually treat everybody like a family there, and they have a market there where you can buy fresh food, and it's like a little gas station kiosk in the break room of all things. And then not only that, like,
Yeah.
just seeing how they keep talking about how, oh, we're going to upgrade to this system, we're going to get this new equipment, we're going to upgrade this set. And that was a big thing with me and Crazy Wolf here, is that we always advocated for, like, okay, this is the equipment we need. This is what we need to do our job better. And no matter how many times we screamed and cried about it, they just would not listen to us, because they just didn't see it as a worthwhile investment. Like, for example, we were running two,
They
like,
didn't see it as a worthwhile investment to upgrade anything. Most of the equipment at that studio belonged to the museum. And if I could just speak for a minute about their soundproof studio, there was nothing
soundproof.
soundproof about that studio. I
They just
remember sitting there during a break, and I all of a sudden heard the Shire music from the Lord of the Rings through the soundproof wall.
Yeah, Master Control just did not do
And when I
anything there.
told the supervisor, hey, I don't think the walls are actually soundproof, I heard somebody watching Lord of the Rings on a laptop. You know what they did in response? They yelled at the guy who was watching Lord of the Rings on the laptop. I was like, no, that wasn't the point I was making. Fucking idiots. Your
Yeah.
soundproof studio ain't soundproof.
To give an example of what they mean by soundproof, they just painted the walls black. That's it.
They painted the wall black, and then they called it a day. You can hear the rain over the weather person. How messed up is that?
Yeah. Not only
It's
that,
ridiculous.
the station engineer, at one point we had two microphones. So we're supposed to have at least 4 or 5. That's the maximum. So if we lose one,
Yeah.
that means that we'll have a backup just in case. But a big thing was that the station engineer got our mics for repairs, and he lost them for 4 months. So we had two
Yeah.
microphones. We had to give one to the weather person, and then we had to take it off the weather person, and then put it on another person. And the day that, well, I don't want to say, I'm just going to refer to it as the incident out of respect for you, Crazy Wolf. But the day
Yeah,
of that
thanks.
incident, poor Crazy Wolf, we had two mics, and he was miking up like 6 or 7 people in between sessions.
I even yelled at the supervisor. I was like, you can't be expected, you can't throw 5 people at me and give me 2 microphones and then tell me to mic up everybody. There's like 5 people in there and we got 2 microphones. Do the math. How do you think this is going to go?
I mean, what are you gonna do? Just like rip the microphone in half and say that it's 1.5 microphones?
Right?
It's like the same concept of like
It's
taking
like,
a $100
you got
bill.
5 minutes. You don't even have, no, it's not even 5 minutes. It's like 2 minutes. You've got 2 minutes to figure all of this out. Meanwhile, the hosts are being disagreeable. I want to say a bad word.
Say a bad word. It's 18 plus.
Okay, they're being disagreeable cunts. But you know, it's like I have to deal with that. Plus, there's like 5 guests who have just walked in. I'm trying to get everybody in front of the camera, trying to give them their cues, but the hosts ignore the cues because they think they know better than everybody else. And then I was the one that got screwed for that. Like, and I made a scene right before I walked out and said goodbye. I made a scene. And I was right. I was right. I went into the booth where everybody else was working, all my coworkers, and I was like, I've just been fired. This is your friendly reminder that you're all expendable. And they took that to heart, and everybody made a mass exodus. There's like maybe 1, maybe 2 people that are still there.
Yep. Everybody left.
Like everybody else, they left.
And you know what's funny though? That job was posted again today, or the other day.
Yeah,
literally,
they keep posting openings for it because they can't keep anybody because they breed a toxic work environment that nobody likes. Because it's only for the quote-unquote elites that have taken over the station and think they know better than everybody.
And that's the funny thing.
If they really knew better, they would know what a soundproof means.
See, it's funny. Tasty says
And
maybe
I'm
they got
so mad
soundproof
about that.
confused with sightproof. Maybe that's why it was painted black.
Oh, God. Yeah, that could be it.
And see, that's the thing, chat, is that my VR adventures and interviews, that was something that we originally planned for that morning show. We were initially going to do these kinds of things for that morning show. But obviously that didn't work out, and even if I did, what would happen is that the sales department would get a hold of it and they'd try to take it away from me, or they'd try to force me to do it with no extra pay. And I did this because I thought it would look cool. I thought it would be the coolest thing ever to have a virtual character on a morning news show. But they didn't take me seriously, and well, I'm glad that I didn't do it. And the thing is, they kept talking up about how, oh, we're going to beat this rival news station. We're going to beat them in ratings. And to be honest, the only thing
they don't stand a chance.
They don't. The only thing that they beat them in is maybe the morning show. Because the morning show at the other news station that I work at, it's not great. Because the personality, like the lady that does the morning show is not exactly the most charismatic person. But that's all it is but that's all they have going for them. As far as news and quality of graphics and equipment and everything else, they care. They care 100%. They care about their people.
That is a true to God television studio. That is what it is supposed to be.
Yeah, they actually genuinely care about what they're putting out there. They care about their people because they know without their people, they don't have a product. Because if you take out your supply chain people, like say if you take out let me just use a metaphor here. So say you take out your truckers, who's going to deliver your goods to Walmart? Nobody. It's just going to sit in the warehouses.
Exactly.
Oh, hello, Solace Don Rice. My redeems don't work in when I'm in VR chat, but I'll go ahead and give myself some head pats just because, in honor. Because I can do them in VR chat, but I'd have to actually go into Blender and then put them into my model and stuff, and it's just a lot of work. But hey, we're just having a nice hot spring chat talking about work and stuff, But yeah, like that's
We took our jobs.
No, you're fine, Solace. I it's just it's just a technical stuffy. But yeah, we're just having a nice hot spring conversation. You're welcome to join into the conversation. We're just talking about how we chilling somewhere else in VRC. It's been a bad 2 days. Ah, I see. Well, I mean, you're welcome to just kind of listen in. You're welcome here. You're safe. This is a nice little safe realm. Yeah, we've kind of had a bad. Well, we've had a bad year to be honest. Um, yeah, because we were talking
Yeah.
about the news station that we used to work at, which was awful. Um, but yeah,
Terrible
what I'm
place.
trying to think of what else. Oh yeah, so uh, one thing that was a big problem where there was the sales department. Um, yeah, so the sales department was where all of the money went because for some reason the sales department had a 4K camera when they don't even do any of the filming. Why do they have a 4K camera when we
Wait,
have
that's
camera?
news to me. They had a 4K camera?
Yeah, and they gave it to Mason. But that's the
Oh
thing
my
is that
god.
they had a 4K camera. And another thing is that the cameras that we had when we were working with, they were so old that Sony doesn't even make parts for them anymore. That's how old that equipment is. And they're like, oh, we're going to beat that rival news station. Yeah, not in a million years. I mean, clearly the rival news station
It
makes more
takes a
money
little
than
bit of
them.
rain and your weather person can't be heard.
I will
They're
say this
not
now.
on the. They're not anywhere close on the level of the other TV stations. They're nowhere close to that,
And there's not
and they never will be. They won't change.
and the thing with me and that job is that I love that news station that I'm working at now. But the thing is, like, I've told this to my therapist today, and it's probably what I'm going to tell them is that it's not a you problem, it's a me problem. Because I take responsibility for my own mental health and what has been going on with me. So it's not them, it's me. But the thing is that they take responsibility, like, I take responsibility for that. And then they also, again, they keep their people and they take care of their employees because, like, they talked about like holiday bonuses and vacation time and all this amazing stuff where they actually genuinely care about the people that they work with. Um and again, some of the technology that I've seen I have never seen before in my life. Like the automatic cameras are insane. Blazing
That
said,
good.
let me see. Blaze said something here. Let me pull the screen up a little bit. I will say this now. You've always been a kind and wonderful individual that anyone would have the honor to know. I'm happy you and I got to know each other, and hopefully one day we shall meet in this world of the real. Me too, Blaze. I mean, I also got to introduce you to one of your idols, and we had a nice little chit chat with each other. Because, just Matt Hill, whenever we did that interview, it was just like a bunch of friends coming back together and just having a nice chat with one another. I mean, we just joked around. We had fun. I asked him genuine questions, and then we swore for crying out loud. He swore in character, and that's just like Matt's just a genuinely good guy, and it shows you that when somebody is famous like that and they've done so much for people, you don't have to have a big head to be successful or and loved. And that's something that I try to do and I try to emulate, is that I want people to know that you don't have to be a jerk to be successful or to be talented. And that is something that those news anchors that we worked with just don't understand, is that they think that they're hot shit
They
on a
think they're
golden
holier than
platter.
thou because they're the ones in front of the camera. Like, we're the ones that are on TV, and everyone else doesn't matter because they're not on the TV.
Mm-hmm.
No, we make the TV happen. Stupids. They're both stupid. We make the TV happen.
I'm on
It
VRC
doesn't work.
in
Everybody
space.
has to be a cooperative, has to cooperate with one another. We are all a team. But they don't like the whole idea of being a team. They like the idea of We are the ones that are famous, and you are nothing. You are the peasants
Okay,
below
so
us.
this will be the
We're
last
gonna film
story.
you, and yeah,
Oh yeah, filming people, like filming us and taking photos. So the last story I'll tell of the news station horror was the um so the person, one of the anchors was such a control freak that they like our producer, for example, she was a full-timer, very very sweet person. Like I kind of like had a really bad
yeah.
relationship with her at first, but then I started to grow to like her. And you know, I love Amanda. She was awesome. She put up with so much stuff. Like I finally
She
understood
did.
why she was the way she was, and I really hope that she's doing okay now. But so what happened is that our producer, um, at the news station that I work at now, it's basically impossible for them to insert a new photo or some random thing or some in the middle of a broadcast because um, they program everything beforehand in the automation system, so you can't do stuff like that. It's very difficult to do. So we could put like bumpers and stuff, but not photos or anything. So the thing is
Yeah.
that at the old job, it was consistent. We always had one of the hosts who would be like, "Oh, can you insert this photo or this video here in like the 5 minutes break time?" And then they got mad whenever they couldn't do that. And another thing, I remember there was a time that we had the host who, there was an interview at, because it was a dual station, which was kind like the way that they did it was kind of illegal. Um, so and I'm kind of backtracking here, but one thing is that the sales department also, we would have these holiday parties, or we would have had those holiday parties, and the sales department would consistently come and steal the prizes. So we had like a $500 gift card that was put in like these Walmart tumblers, and um, the sales department would actually go in and steal the gift cards before anybody was given those tumblers. So they, like, the $500 gift cards that were advertised were just not there. But anyway, the thing that I wanted
Yeah.
to say about the story was is that one of the anchors became such a control freak that he decided that, okay, I want to produce the show. I want to be the one that's in full control of it, because he thought it was his
Yeah.
show. So our producer was just so fed up with it that she went to part time because the boss wouldn't do anything about it. So the because the our producer went to the boss multiple times and said like, "Hey, this is going on." And another friend of ours, another Matt that we know, who just got into VR chat,
Yeah.
he went to them multiple times, and all he got was dismissive excuses, and people weren't listening to him. So he left. But a big thing was that they came to visit Eno today. Oh well, thank you, Solace Dawnrise. It's really nice to see you here, and again, we're just chatting about our past. So, I mean, it's kind of more of a
Yeah.
podcasty
Yeah, I'm
esque
gonna grab
environment.
my dog real quick. I'll be right back. I let her outside. I gotta get her inside.
That's okay. Yeah, we're
Go
kind of
ahead
doing
and
like
continue.
a podcasty esque experience while we're in a relaxing hot spring and just getting these things off our chest. But again, so Matt, whenever he uh after the incident with Matt, and he was terminated. I don't want to say fired. When he was terminated from the position, the anchors realized that they could just use, they could make up some story about them disrespecting a guest or somebody that we're interviewing, and just make up some story to the boss to get somebody fired, because that's what happened with Matt. Is that a guest, there's something with a guest, and then they use that as bait to fire him. So then the anchors made up this fake story about how the producer was rude to one of the guests, and without even fact checking this at all, the new boss pulled our producer into their office and like threatened her job and her livelihood, and was like, and gave her a disciplinary plan, and saying like, you shouldn't do this, and uh, like like I don't care what the guest did or what mood you're in. You're not supposed to disrespect the guest. But the thing is that our producer didn't disrespect the guest at all. In fact, our producer emailed the guest afterward and contacted them, and said and asked and said if there was any point at any time that I was rude to you, I really do apologize. I'll be better next time, and sent like a bunch of apology notes to him. And then the guest that allegedly was upset with them said, "What are you talking about? Like, you were fine. You were actually really nice to me." So the anchors had made up a story to tell the boss, who essentially encouraged their
Yeah.
behavior and just dismissed any of our complaints about them. And basically they
She
made up a
was the kind
story.
of person to. She was the kind of person to make an ass out of you and me. If you get what
Yeah.
I mean.
So instead of looking into it, she just decided, okay, I'll just take their word for it, and threatened their job without even investigating or even corresponding and asking our crew, hey, did this actually happen? No, she took their word for it and threatened their job.
Yeah.
So even whenever one of our coworkers, another Matt, went up to the boss and said, hey, this stuff is like, the guest actually said this is what happened, and this was all a fabrication, and the boss was not having any of it. She was like, oh no, that is exactly what happened, and you're not going to bring it up again, because she didn't like being wrong. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's the big thing, is she didn't like being wrong. And she was imagine like an abusive mother is what she was like a narcissistic abusive mom is what she sounded
Evil
like.
stepmother.
Yeah,
She's an
so
evil stepmother, and the hosts were the evil stepsisters.
yeah, because what happened was, I remember when we were learning Associated Press ENPS, so that's a news uh, production program where you can put like news rundowns and okay, so this is what we're gonna do in this block and this commercial break, and this is what graphics we're gonna play. This is when weather's gonna happen. So it's an Associated Press program that lets local news stations and affiliates fill out their stuff and get their plans in place. So what happened was I remember there was a time that we were learning the Ross automation system, and we were learning how that worked. And I remember that we were trying to get used to the new system, and Matt brought up, not you, the other Matt, he brought up, well, this new system is really complicated to learn. Like, I'm just still learning the new layout. And because she had to open her mouth, she said, well, this is how it's going to be, so you're going to need to get used to it, just in this narcissistic attitude. And it's awful. And, that's why
Yeah.
whenever I went to that new news station, I was shaking, and I could not get the feeling off of me about what happened there. And that's why I've just been having a lot of second thoughts about the job, because of being reminded of those days. And it was terrible. And I've been telling people, anytime I go to a local business, I'm like, yeah, don't do any business with these people. They're awful. They're cheap, they're awful, and these beloved hometown news anchors that think they're like James Earl Jones or Troy Baker or somebody, they're not the good Christian boys that everyone thinks they are. They're horrible, narcissistic jerks.
They're terrible people. Terrible people. Do you want to tell them about the time that the one host who used to be in the Navy freaking out on a shoot? It was like for a pawn shop or something. He had a bazooka, right? Or something like that. And it wasn't loaded, but he's aiming this at the cars that are passing by as a funny joke.
Yeah, it was an
Which-
AT4.
Made me so triggered that I actually, I will scream at this guy if I see him in public.
Yeah, so in the
So I
footage,
hope I don't see him in public.
they didn't
'Cause
verify
I'll
it.
scream at him.
They didn't ever check the footage, because that was something that they always advocated for, was checking the footage. But since it was one of the anchors who edited it, they didn't see that as a major problem. So what happened was,
Nope.
in this compilation of footage, they used, in this veteran coffee shop that had opened up on one of the streets, they have a bunch of military memorabilia, props, and inert firearms and stuff like that. So The news anchor thought it was a good idea to take the AT-4 recoilless rocket launcher and aim it at a busy street and pretend to shoot a car that is driving by. And they aired this on television.
Like, you don't do that.
Yeah,
And he was in the Navy. There's no excuse for that shit. Making the rest of the Navy look bad over here.
Right, it's terrible.
Jackass.
And when I tell some of these horror stories to that news station I'm working at now, they're not surprised. Because they've heard stories, but they didn't know how bad it actually was until I showed them photos and it just told them what actually went on behind the scenes over there. And it's just an atmosphere of respect at that new one. They treat everybody like an asset rather than an expendable investment.
Yeah.
We went from narcissistic news anchors to kaboom RPG. That escalated. Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Not only that,
it goes
like,
quick.
and because we're not mentioning names and we're not mentioning locations or the actual station itself, I feel confident that I can say this. They were always on drugs every time they went on air.
God.
There is now. Let me say very clearly that I do not have anything against people who smoke weed. Nothing at all. I think if it's your thing, it's your thing. I have a lot of friends that are stoners. I have a lot of friends that do it. There's nothing wrong with it, especially if you have a medicinal need for it and it helps you legitimately. However, there are FCC rules that state you absolutely cannot be under the influence of anything when you're on air because you're not psychologically in the right spot to be giving an objective newscast. But the hosts were always on something. One of them was always high on air. And then there was another, the other one was on crack. Literally, there was an incident where one of the weather people, before we got there, was caught selling his gas card from the station to a gas station clerk to do a drug deal. And he was always on something every time he went on air. And they never checked this. Yeah. And that's the funny thing is that I remember the new boss literally sent out this email saying that we have a no tolerance policy for the use of marijuana. And I'm just like, okay, does that include the hosts too?
Unless you're my favorite. My favorites get to do whatever they want.
And that's the thing, is that they don't realize it's a them problem. They don't care.
It is.
Because I've seen that news assistant position pop up so many times over this year. I want to say at least 5 times. Because I've contacted some of my buddies who still work there. And they said that... And one of them said that the person who replaced me only lasted 2 weeks and then they left. The person that was one of the news assistants there that Crazy Wolf and I worked with, her name was Megan. She came back from a vacation and was producing, but then she left because she couldn't deal with the stress anymore because it was so much. Yeah. And then one of the other news assistants that I was working with, said that he was leaving because he just couldn't deal with it anymore. Because the thing was, is that they kept
had this thing that they liked to do where they would, like, you wanted to try and get a raise, so you would try to take up extra responsibilities. Say,
exactly.
Like, going out on the truck
exactly.
for shoots. So then they're like, okay, well, then you can go out on the shoots, but we won't pay you extra. But this way you can gain some experience so we can actually give you the position. But then after they give you the training, they just expect you to do it now. They don't give you the raise. They just expect you to take on extra responsibilities without paying you more for those extra responsibilities. You get paid the same amount every single time. I remember they adjusted our hours by 30 minutes. And so instead of like the show ending at 9, it ended at 8:30 because they didn't want to pay us for the extra 30 minutes.
Yep.
But we had to come in 30 minutes earlier for some reason because apparently there just wasn't enough time between us arriving there. Well, there actually was. We had plenty of time to get the studio ready, and now they gave us way too much time, so we're just kind of there doing nothing. And then they yell at us because we're not doing anything. You need to be doing something. Grab a broom and start sweeping. Okay, sorry. You know,
Yeah, I'll clean up this non-existent
it's
dust that's on the floor.
yeah, because we lit God, and we were the only ones that took care of that studio. There were the other people who ran shows in there. One of them literally left fucking raw meat in the sink. That wasn't
Oh
actually a
yeah.
sink; it was just a prop sink, which is a very important detail,
They
mind you,
also left
because
a.
nobody was supposed to do that, and
They
they did it
also
on top of a note that we left, specifically saying, "Don't leave a mess in our sink."
not only that, they also left a quesadilla, like a fully cooked quesadilla, under one of the things.
Yeah, that shit.
And that was the
God.
thing is that they always expected us to just like set up the studio for them every single time, which I mean that's fair, that's our job to set up the studio and make sure everything was set up, but like they would complain if we didn't do it a certain way. So like one example is that so as camera people, one of the things that you do in a newscast is that you will one of the signs is to take your finger and just do this to tell them to wrap it up without vocally saying it.
Yes.
So one of the problems is that they thought that what they were doing was more important than our schedule. So we had to consistently drop things in stories because whenever we would tell them to wrap it up, they would not wrap it up. And then they would like
They would keep going and keep going and keep going, and we would just be sitting there, flipping our hands around like we're goddamn helicopters, wondering, why won't they shut up? Why won't they just stop talking? They just continue and continue, and my arm is getting tired, and so I stop and I give up. And they're like, why didn't you signal them? And we're like, we did. We both sat there like good little helicopters.
well, eventually we just stopped doing it. We just stopped wrapping them up because they would refuse to wrap up.
Yeah, we just gave up. We gave up, and we literally were just like, we're not giving them signals anymore. And then they got mad at us for not giving them signals. Like, bitch, you never listened to the signals to begin with. What the fuck do you mean you have a problem with it now?
Yeah, and there was another time that so we addressed all of this stuff with that new boss because we thought that the new boss would actually listen to our complaints. No, she actually amplified all of our problems.
She made it worse by tenfold.
Yeah, she made it like 10
I
times
did
worse.
not think was possible, but I do not foresee. If she continues managing that place, I don't foresee it lasting very long.
And that was the thing is that the old boss, while not perfect, at least she stayed out of our way. And one of the things that she even said to some of our people was, if you make my job easier, then I don't care what you do. And that was another thing is that we had a director. His name was Chris, and I don't think you met him, but he was one of the directors for the opposing news station across the hall. So I met him at my retail job a little while after he left because he resigned shortly after doing our morning show, and I talked to him about it, and he told me the reason that he left was because of the manager. Because he pointed out some things where he said like, okay, this is something that we could do, that we could fix, and we could make this better, and it made him a target.
God forbid you have any criticism of anything in that place, because you're wrong. You're just somehow always wrong.
Tell them about the OSHA violation.
Oh, that fucking wooden piece of shit. They had the audacity. These motherfuckers. Okay, so the other studio, right, the NBC one, right, we were ABC, they were NBC, and the NBC one had a morning show of their own. It was like a lifestyle show. But they were like, man, our studio just isn't big enough. Can we use yours? And we were like, yeah, that's fine, I guess. So they started using our set because it looked more like a lifestyle set. Well, then they started getting really greedy about it. So they ordered this big wooden piece of shit on wheels with 2 handlebars made of shitty plastic that broke on contact. So when we woke up in the morning, early morning, mind you, we would always have to move this wooden POS around the studio, which took up massive amount of floor space. Not to mention, we are having to mess with cables that are just strewn about all over the floor, right?
Fire
on
hazard.
top of this thing that we have to, it's like playing a game of Tetris every morning. with this. And the only reason this thing existed was because the other studio wanted it. But the problem was nobody was maintaining this piece of crap. So it kept breaking and nails were becoming exposed. So guests were welcomed to sit on this thing. And I'm like, I'm not going to be here when somebody falls through this thing and gets tetanus. Because I don't want to be the one who gets their pay docked. They would have blamed me for it.
Oh, 100%.
I knew that.
You.
I knew that every day, and I hated that thing.
And they still have it, too.
I complained about it, and they were like, well, we paid a lot of money for it, so it stays.
Clearly they didn't pay that much for it.
I think OSHA would disagree with the whole exposed nails and nobody taking care of it and the handlebars being broken.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I remember there was a time where one of the anchors...
And sure, it was on wheels, and sure, it's on a level surface, but those wheels were gunked up or some shit, because they did not roll well.
I remember one time that I told the I was setting up the camera shot for an interview with the anchor, one of the anchors, and I was like, hey, can you move the chair just slightly, your seating position, so I can get you in frame? And then he, grabbed it was one of the police officer guests, and he grabbed their hands. It's like, oh, you want me to kiss the police officer? It's like, why don't you just sit there and do your job? It's like, I'm literally doing my job. I'm asking you to move so you can get on camera. What, would you prefer that I have you off frame?
Honestly, I would have just... If he gave knee lip like that, you know what I would have done? I would have pointed the camera straight up and left it there.
Yeah.
That's a power move. That is what you call a power move. The show can't happen now. Because I've decided against it.
Do you prefer having the camera facing the ceiling, where we can see the soundproofing that you've done in here?
Do your job. Oh, I was trying to do that, but you didn't want me to, so... Now we're having a problem.
And another thing is that they would, well, for one, let me tell you this, this segues into another story, but, so, when we did, we had this, Facebook question thing that we did every morning, so they would ask, here, I think I'm sinking into the floor a little bit, let me do that. Okay, so we had this thing called the Facebook question every morning where we would ask, they would ask a question, just usual stupid pop culture stuff, is Die Hard a Christmas movie and stuff like that. So one of them was how do you like your ice? And you probably might remember this one. So it was, how do you like your ice?
Yeah.
And it was, do you like it cubed? Do you like it more of the Sonic style? And our anchor literally just went on to Google Images and found a picture with the name Ice on it, and he publicly on the Facebook,
ice.
And we aired this, and it was not ice, it was crystal meth. It was like, how do you like your ice?
It was awful. It was the most embarrassing thing. Dude, there are guests that go to that morning show every morning, and they pay money to have airtime at that place. They should get that shit for free. Fuck that. Fuck paying money for that. Are you kidding? Who would pay money for that? You go to the competition.
I literally still have a photo of that. It would always be
like, you're going to embarrass us in front of the guests, and I'm like, bitch, I don't have to try very hard.
Yeah, and a lot of their guests are going over...
This place is already an embarrassment.
The thing is, a lot of the guests are already going over to the other place because they're getting better business over there. They're getting their money's worth over there. Are. The only thing that station has is nostalgia talent from ages ago, because they literally pulled back one of their anchors from the 90s and contracted him out of retirement because they couldn't get anyone else. In fact, and another thing is that they abused their weather people. So we had this really sweet weather lady.
Yeah.
And she was awesome. She was always accurate with everything she did. She was amazing.
She was the best person in that entire studio.
But rather than hire a meteorologist for their station specifically, they had her go and do our weather and then go over and do their weather, as well as a co-host for their morning show. They made her do like 3 different things and also be a reporter. because they couldn't get anyone else.
All at the same time.
All at the same
You would have to
time.
literally hop between weather segments between both studios, and she had to be pinpoint accurate every time, which wasn't always possible because we had to deal with our hosts who were never shutting up, remember? So it made her job more difficult. It sucked.
I remember, and another
That
thing,
place was terrible to
a
her.
pet peeve that I had was, I'm glad she left. I'm glad that all of them did. But a pet peeve that I had was whenever we would set it up in the morning, so we would do, at least this is how we did it for a while. So what we do is we would go in like, I want to say like 5 o'clock in the morning. We would record our weather segments. So we would have our weather girl or weatherman come in, and they would record the weather for the rest of the show. Hey, this is the upcoming forecast, yada, yada, yada. So what happened is our news anchor was so damn impatient. Whenever we were recording, he would set up his little stupid Dollar Tree decorations and be as loud and obnoxious as possible, setting up the set while we're recording the weather, and 9 times out of 10, he would drop something and it would break, and we'd have to start over because he couldn't wait 5 minutes for us to be done recording.
Damn. I don't think I was around for that.
Big says, one of these days I need to meet up with you both and grab some drinks and share these stories. Yes, because we have so many horror stories.
A lot that we could just unpack upon you.
It's such a nightmare. Oh, and not only that, like we got these I don't know if you did, but we got these t-shirts that we were supposed to wear whenever we went out to live shoots so they would know that we were part of the TV crew team. They couldn't even get that right. They literally like made the logos multiple different sizes, like an amateur in Photoshop. And they made the logos like 4 different sizes. I might actually take a picture and show you, Big, if I can find it. But literally, it said TV crew on the back, and then like on the front, it was just the station logos, just multiple different sizes. It was awful. And I'm trying to think of another. Oh yeah. Oh, so we did this. We did this charity thing where every summer where we would go to the Humane Society and we would record a live broadcast to get these animals adopted, which is a good thing. And that's one thing that they did do good, was that they showed off the Humane Society, and then they'd feature a pet of the week. And that would help these pets get adopted because they got the airtime, and these pets that have been there for a long time get a happy home. However, the graphics lady there needs to fucking go back to high school because she did not know shit about graphic design. Like, you know that meme where it's like graphic design is my passion? It was literally that. She was that kind of person. So
she
what would
had
happen?
The audacity to mock Jerry Anderson right in front of me and say that his visual effects were dumb and outdated and stupid.
Says
and that
the person
she's better than him. She literally can't crop out the white from a JPEG.
Yeah, so that's what I'm getting into is we did
Jerry
this...
Anderson is the king compared to her.
Literally, so what we would do is like when the weather person would do the updates or they would go live. And by the way, I watched their broadcast this past summer. It is still like this. So what would happen is that they have this template graphic that they just put on, and it'll say like, oh, this is the special broadcast with a little logo on it, but there's so many sponsors for it, so like all the local businesses sponsor it, but the problem is they don't know shit about logo placement. They put the logos on the center of the screen in just random locations. Not only that, they didn't make PNGs either, so you just get like these white JPEGs with the logos on them. And I have a photo, multiple photos actually.
Our weather segment started to look like the side of a race car.
It was like the movie Idiocracy.
If that gives you an idea.
So the thing is, I have photos of this to prove it. Like literally, the logo of some local business was in front of our weatherman. So it was literally plastered onto his head because they just could not bother to change the logo placement. And whenever somebody brought it up, they're like, "Oh, well, we need to run these sponsors." It's like, well, you can run them and place them better. I could do that.
You can do a better job at cropping these things. You can use your brain. Literally use your brain.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that's why another reason why I left was because of the
You need
treatment.
to
But
have more than 2 neurons fire for you to figure this one out, I'm afraid.
yeah, that's why I. That's another reason why I left. Because when I looked at my manager evaluation, one of the things that they said was like, "Oh, you're doing great," yada yada yada. But they said, Eno needs to learn ENPS so that they can learn how to produce, and they were trying to teach me to direct, which is that's a good skill to have. But they also wanted me to learn the live truck, which is basically if you see any local news or some big news agency like ABC, Fox News, whatever, with a news truck that's just a van that has a big tower radio antenna on it, that's basically what that is. So essentially, it has its own generator. So when you go inside, you can connect to the mother system, which allows us to get the live feedback to the station. And if we don't use a live truck, we have this thing called TVUs, which are these backpacks that bounce off of cell phone towers, and that's how they get their signal back to the station. But the thing is that with the live truck, I was like they kept trying to get me to learn it, and I kept refusing. And the reason that I kept refusing is because I knew, and I even told them this. It's like, if I learn how to use that live truck, they are going to expect me to do it every single time. And that's why I didn't learn how
And they
to
did.
do a lot of the things, is that they would have expected me to do it every single time. And I just was not going to do that. So that's another reason I left. And also, what happened was in the week that I put in my 2 weeks notice and I told them that I was leaving, I had it wasn't a medical emergency, but it felt like one. So when you have an anxiety attack, it can mimic the symptoms of a heart attack.
Yeah.
So I had an anxiety attack or a panic attack or what have you at my retail job, and I had to leave and rush home and go immediately to bed. But the thing is that I went and did I went to go get some labs done to make sure that that I was okay and that it wasn't like some organ failure or something. So I went to go get a lab done and get that tested. So I told the boss, I was like, look, I just had a medical emergency, so I'm not going to be able to come in for my last week. And I was very professional about it. And I was like, okay, this is what's going on. I can't, for medical reasons, come in. I'm sorry about that. I hope that, thank you for the opportunity for working here and all that. And I'm not going to swear. I'm not going to give her the time of day. But the boss basically in simplified terms said, thank you for your contributions to Nexstar Media. Because you are not able, and saddens me that you're not able to come in for your last week. It also makes you ineligible for rehire with Nexstar Media. Thank you for your contribution, but you're also leaving your crew short-staffed. It's like, do you even care that I had a medical emergency, and you're more concerned about? She wasn't concerned if we were short-staffed. She was just spiteful and hateful.
She didn't care if you were literally dying. She just wanted the bottom line.
Precisely.
If you didn't deliver the bottom line, then you might as well be dead. She's literally the embodiment of that company from Lethal Company.
Oh, 100%.
You might as well be dead if you're not useful to me. And then she throws you out the airlock.
Yeah. And, and that's the thing that surprises me is that, it doesn't surprise me. Let me read the chat real quick. I don't know what it was, but a couple days ago I stood up to stretch and it felt like I almost blacked out. Oh, what the? I literally just teleported.
Oh.
Yeah, that was weird. Can somebody clip that? Anyway, yeah, so one thing that happened, that's like whenever you do that and you stretch and you almost black out, I think what I've been told from my doctor is that, like, when you stand up really quickly, that's the blood just rushing to your brain because it's so focused in other parts of your body that it's just, like, the intensive, like, doing it so quickly is just really intensive on your body, so it's just a blood flow thing. So it's not anything super dangerous, it's just something that happens, but yeah, like, that was a big thing with me, is that it's not surprising to me that they have a very low employee retention rate because they do not realize that they are the problem. They're the reason that they keep
They
losing people. They don't because they don't have anything else but nostalgic talent and stuff like that. They don't realize that they're the problem, and it's going to catch up to them at some point because if you got
They're
sales
very
department,
short-sighted.
if they got a
They're
sales
the kind
department.
of people that will fix everything with duct tape.
And the last thing that I'll say before we kind of wrap up the stream is it's funny that you mentioned duct tape because you know exactly what I'm going to say next.
What?
So we had the table of the news desk for the news broadcast. What we would do is there was like this there was a Thanksgiving tablecloth we put over it to make sure that like no fingerprints and stuff would get on it and it was clean.
Yeah.
So what would happen is we would put that on after every newscast, after we cleaned the table and made sure there were no fingerprints on it.
Yeah,
So
but the
eventually,
issue was that it had like rips in it and tears in it. It was very old. It was like a Thanksgiving table set thing, but it had holes in it. So even if you put it over the thing, it's not really covering it. So I brought it up with them, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll probably do that later." I was like, "What do you mean you'll do that later? It doesn't cost much to buy a new tablecloth." And I made them all look stupid because I went to Party City the next day, and I bought 3 new tablecloths for less than $1.
yeah, like a couple cents.
And then I was like, "Yeah, here you go. Yeah, and just a couple cents." And it's like they got all 3 of them somehow ended up getting holes in.
No,
And
it wasn't that it
they
got
were
holes in them.
so cheap.
What happened was that they had the singular one, and then the other 2 were still in their packaging in the back, which was basically the storage area. Because I won't tell you the story about the pumpkin, but to kind of summarize that, there was a pumpkin that was back there for 6 months. And it was rotten, and they just didn't notice. But so what happened was there was a table, like the tablecloth, they had the single one, and the other 2 were in the packages. They were so cheap that these like 50 cent, not even 50 cent, like a couple cent tablecloths, they taped them together when they got holes in them rather than just picking up the replacement package one and putting a new one on there. That's what they're for. That's why we have extra ones. But no, you're going to tape it? You're going to waste the tape to fix a couple cent tablecloth that's meant to...
Cheap ass motherfucker. They're less than $1 for 3 of them. Party City. And they're gonna duct tape it. That's how you know you're not working at a television studio anymore. You're working at the Krusty Krab.
Is this the Krusty Krab? Well, the thing is, the Krusty Krab is actually better because SpongeBob and Squidward working at the Krusty Krab, they have a living wage where they can have their own multi-story house with multiple rooms and have free time to go anywhere they want.
God.
In my last job, I didn't even bother putting in a 2 weeks notice.
Because...
Literally, when I was driving home exhausted, I decided I was quitting and never going back. I've been there. That's kind of how I felt about the news station job. I was dreading going in every morning because it's just, what are they going to scream at us at this time? Or who's going to, who's going to leave next? Or, like, what problem is going to happen? And, like, the last story that I will tell, because this will be the last one, is... they would consistently point out errors on air. So, like, if a teleprompter jumped, or, like, there was a sound that was off cue, or there was something just wrong with the camera, they would point it out on air. This is the Streisand effect. You don't point something out like that, because the thing is, if you point it out, people are going to notice it. If you don't point it out, they likely won't. That's the Streisand effect. If you draw attention to something, then people are going to be attentive to it. If you don't mention it, then nobody's going to know. But the problem is like, anytime there was an error, they would point it out on air. So, and another thing is that they would...
The worst time to do it.
They would call our names out on air and be like, "Oh, well, Matt was sleeping on the prompter again," or like, "Oh, like so and
which
so
I
is,
never was. I was the best prompter there.
or so and so is asleep on the audio board, or like not doing their job, or there was a they would make offensive nicknames to us that weren't really like, they wouldn't say cuss words or anything, but they would say, uh, so we had this guy named Dylan, and he had two jobs, and he was exhausted, poor guy, but he was exhausted, and he would sometimes like fall asleep, and they would just call him Sleepy Dylan, falling asleep on the teleprompter, and they would just insult them for just doing their job and trying, because they wouldn't give these people a chance. It's like, for example, when I came back from my vacation, I went to visit Tasty up in Virginia, and I came back from my vacation, and I only got like 4 hours of sleep because I came in at like 11 o'clock, and I genuinely loved working there at that time, and I missed my crew, I missed my friends, and well, at least I thought that the anchors were my friends. So then I come back, and that's kind of when everything started going downhill. Is after I came back from my vacation. So I had very little sleep. I
Yeah.
was jet lagged, and I was running the prompter, and it was fine for the rest of the show. And I even bought, like, with my own money, all this exotic candy. So because one of the anchors really loved candy, but I brought him this candy for him to try on air as a segment where we could all be on air together and try it. But then the show was, something went wrong with the timing of the show, and they got cut off, and then they got really angry about that. And it happens, but when they got cut off, like when we were doing the news updates or the topicals, which were basically like these 30-second news bumpers that said like, hey, coming up tomorrow, so and so is going to happen. So um they they were like, oh well, Eno is slow as shit on the prompter. It's like, I was jet lagged, man, give me a break. Oh, there goes Crazy Wolf. But yeah, I was jet lagged, and I didn't have a lot of. I wasn't awake, really. And I came in because, instead of calling in, because I missed my crew genuinely, and I wanted to be at work. But they obviously didn't see the value in that. And I just. And the host just came in, and they started insulting us, and like saying like, oh, why the hell did that happen? It's like, make sure it never happens again. And they were just like fuming at us, and it just was not okay. And the difference between the work environment there and then the news station that I'm at now is that the people that are at this new news station is that they, like, everyone, including the management, will agree if somebody's being a jerk or it's uncalled for. Because in their harassment policy at the new place, they said, if anybody does something like that, that is not okay and it needs to be reported, but that does not shield you from constructive criticism. And constructive criticism is okay. Okay, yeah, that's my bad, because they take responsibility. And but at the old station, they had no such policy. There was no harassment protection policy, and if there was, they didn't put it in place for
Nope.
us. All right. Have a good night, Tasty. Love you, buddy. Hope you're gonna have a good night. But yeah, that's. I think that'll wrap up the stream